Hi, everyone. There are still people logging in, but it looks like we are right at 1 o'clock. So I want to go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I know as fundraisers, you guys wear a lot of hats and you're very busy. And I really, really appreciate the time that you are taking out of your busy day to learn how to make the most of your brand. We are super excited that you're here, and there's a lot of great stuff to learn. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce myself. I am Abby Jarvis. I am part of the team over at QGive. We're all about helping nonprofits raise more money, and we specialize in online fundraising. And we know that having a great brand is a really key part of having a great online fundraising strategy. That's why we're so excited that we have Sarah here. She's going to share some awesome insight that will help you tweak your brand to make you more successful online. I know there are a few QGive clients here with us. If you have any questions at all about how we can help you apply today's takeaways to the work that you're already doing on QGive, let me know. If I can't answer the question for you, I will put you in touch with someone who can. And I know there are also a lot of non-QGive users, and everything we're going to talk about today applies to you as well. Although I will say, if you have any questions about QGive, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with the right person. For your edification, we are recording this webinar. We will send a recording after the webinar is complete. So keep an eye on your inbox. You'll get an email from me probably tomorrow or Friday at the latest, and it will include a link to the webinar and a bunch of other resources that will help you with your ongoing branding activities. And if you have any questions during the presentation, just pop them in the chat box. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end, and I'll be able to track your questions and make sure we get those over to Sarah. Speaking of Sarah, with us today is Sarah Henry. She is part of the team over at Elevation. They are a web design company that specializes exclusively in nonprofit websites. So she's definitely the girl to tell you how to start branding your nonprofit. She has a ton to go over, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Abby, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here with you guys and share a little bit about what we do at Elevation and share our information that we've built about building your brand and building your nonprofit brand, because building your brand is such an incredible portion of what a nonprofit is. And I'm going to kind of go into a little bit about what the brand is and why that might be kind of a scary word for some people. So let's just get started. So a little bit about us. I am the content marketing growth strategist here at Elevation. We are a full service web design agency, and we are dedicated to helping all nonprofits tell their digital story. So we are equipped to help with all sorts of digital solutions. These include web design, graphic design, branding, SEO, including Google Ad Grant Management, email marketing, and social media. So we really have a wealth of knowledge on what nonprofits can do in order to really make the most of their online presence. Along with that, we are really dedicated into making sure that we are closing this digital divide and making sure that nonprofits who have more limited resources and don't have the same opportunities financially as for-profit organizations are able to stay relevant and for front runners in the world of nonprofit and technology. So I'm Sarah. I am, like I said, the content marketing growth manager here at Elevation. I'm born and raised in San Francisco, so if anyone's from California, then missing that a lot right now, because currently I'm living in Buenos Aires, Argentina. We have a branch down here, and it's been an absolute pleasure living and learning Spanish and being here, so that's what I'm doing now. I've been working in the nonprofit sphere for about 10 years and also have background in producing and marketing in the for-profit sphere, and am dedicated in technology and psychology. So a lot of my background is studying psychology and how marketing strategies and digital media and those types of things influence each other. All right. So today what we're going to be talking about is a little overview of what is branding in general, what is the psychology behind the nonprofit brand, and really why is it important for your organization. And then we're going to go into creating the actual brand style guide, and then how you can implement that across all of your different platforms. So let's get started. Nonprofit brand. So the brand is a tricky term. Brand originated in the for-profit world, and it was a way for consumers to associate a group of products or services that come from a specific company under a specific logo or visual. So that was kind of the origination of this brand back when marketing was becoming new, and companies were realizing that when they put their visual in their logo, people began to make associations and were able to recognize when they released new products. They were able to understand that this was from the same organization or same company, and it was something they already trusted, so that trust was able to carry over. So that word brand has really shifted a lot in the last 100 years or so, but really in the last like 50 years, and most importantly, in the last 10 years with the rise of social media. So let's talk about today's brand. So this is a heavy slide, but don't worry, I'm going to break it down. So today's brand is what I like to consider is the net accumulation of your virtual and interpersonal interactions under a specific individual or conglomerate that can create a unique representation encompassing both the reputation, mission, and expected outcome of potential interactions. So this is kind of a lot to take in, but in other words, this is the idea generated inside a person's mind based on all of their previous interactions with the organization, of the mission and the reputation. So I kind of like to think that even the word brand has its own brand, a kind of an example here. So a lot of times when people think of brand, they think of for-profit companies, they think of marketing tricking tactics and psychological influence. And so the word brand kind of has a negative brand in our day and age. But I think that that is shifting, and it's something that we need to now embrace as the brand is so much more than just the logo and just the influence. The brand is becoming your mission. So here's a quote that I read and really resonated with. So I'll read it for you guys. You are a brand whether you like it or not. You're going to leave some impression in a person's mind, and it's your choice whether you want to actively manage that impression or whether you want them to come to their own conclusions of what they think about you. It doesn't matter whether you're a one-person advocacy organization or a transnational INGO. So this is by Ingrid, I'm going to butcher this name, Serena, and she wrote this based on the nonprofit brand, as we're entering this day and age where everyone carries a brand with them. And being afraid of this word and not embracing what it means in this day and age is going to really hinder your fundraising and outreach because you're not able to fully control what your brand stands for. So the power of the brand in this day and age, the brand is able to do so much more than drive consumer spending behavior. The nonprofit brand these days has an immense power of planting your social mission inside the minds of those who interact with you. So building your nonprofit brand is going to be your slow but steady way of changing the world. So what this really means is that your brand is now going to, like, when it implants itself into someone else's mind and they create their own understanding and representation of what your brand is, this brand is now your mission statement. So you have put in your mission statement into their mind, and that's something for them to hold on to and carry with them, bring into conversation and talk about. So you really want to focus on making sure you're doing everything you can to put that mission into their mind and reaching all possible areas. So in this day and age, your brand should be your mission statements. So everyone has a mission statement. If you're a well-established nonprofit or if you're a one-person operation, everyone has a mission statement. And when you want people, what you want people to think about your brand is going to be that statement. So keep that in mind in all of your, and basically for this entire presentation of how can you use these tactics in creating this visual brand style guide to tell the story of your mission statement. And so one thing that I really want to touch on is this idea of brand integrity, because nonprofits and for-profits have a little bit of a difference here, whereas some for-profit organizations might not need this sort of brand integrity, but nonprofit organizations, this is an absolute essential. I mean, it's essential for for-profits, but some of them might not follow it as well. So the brand integrity is this idea that the organization's internal identity should be aligned with the external image, and both of those are aligned with the mission. So basically, this is saying that how your organization runs on the inside, what you guys are really doing on the forefront, like in your daily lives as your job, and how are you presenting that in your external brand image. These should both be aligned. So don't be representing yourself as something that it's not, because this then creates, you're not following brand integrity. And this is a really big essential, both for creating trust and building a reputation within your organization and within the people who are surrounding it. So it goes both ways. If you have a very large organization, keeping this internal identity and will inspire both volunteers and workers, and at the same time, the external image influences those potential donors, fundraisers, and everyone who you interact with. So keep those as your mission. And I want to note that this term was penned by Natalie Kylander, who has done a ton of research in the nonprofit brand sector. The link to a wonderful article written by them is at the bottom of this page, so feel free to check that out. So next we're going to get into the psychology of the brand. And here's a few things that I want to start with. So when you are introducing yourself and your organization, it's easy to think that people will automatically just kind of trust who you are and trust what you're doing. But people are very hesitant when being introduced to new things. So trust must be earned. It's not going to be given. So there's two different kind of first touch points that you can create within your outreach. So one will be organic discovery. And this is when content is discovered by someone when they're searching the web or scrolling through their Instagram feed and no one's referred them to it. It's just something that they discovered on their own. This you have little control over what they first experience. So building trust and trustworthy content is really very important. This is also a slower way of creating trust because people often look to their friends, colleagues, people they follow in order to kind of create a image of trust in their mind. And this, when they discover it themselves, they're going to be a little bit more hesitant to make a decision and a judgment. The other way is a referral. This is when content has been introduced by another source. Judgment is going to be influenced by the original source's brand or reputation. So this creates trust or mistrust much faster. Another thing is we don't like change. And so this might be getting a few eyebrows because most, if not all of you, are change makers, fighting for something different, fighting for your change in your community, in the world. But really the catch here is we don't like change in the things we already trust or are beginning to trust. So as you build your brand, you're beginning this conception and idea in someone's mind. If you start out, the first touch point is we're raising money to save the whales. And then the next touch point would be it's our mission and awareness piece on illegal whaling happening around the world. And then you see the Instagram feed is pictures of resources, of people on the ground, things like that, of doing your mission and working with whales, educating about whales. This makes sense. The person understands your organization is dedicated to saving the whales and already has built authority on the subject. But so now say the person experiences that you're raising money to save the whales, and then you go to their Instagram feed and it's all about the earth and conservation. So there's already a little jump of things might not make as much sense. And if you're very new and just starting out and you don't have that big name brand recognition yet, this is going to confuse people and also hold us back. So this is, excuse me. When things don't match up, we're going to be disappointed and confused, and trust is lost. So how are we going to build this trust? Think of it kind of like a scale. If someone meets you on organic discovery, their level of trust is going to be at 0, and they have no expectations for you whatsoever yet. However, if they meet you based on a referral, they might already have some sort of trust built in, which would be kind of in the positive way. And if they were referred to you from a site that they themselves don't really trust, it might already be in the negative side. So you don't want you trying to not have referrals from the mistrusted sites. So in this way, you need to make sure that everyone you partner with has that same, has that same level of mission and trust and integrity that you want your brand to stand by. And basically, once you start out from that spot, depending on your actions and their interactions with you, trust will be gained and lost based on how you fulfill their expectations. So when you meet their expectations or succeed their expectations, then the trust is going to go up. And the more they trust, the more they're going to be able to actively predict what you are going to do, and then become more active, loyal fundraisers or donors, constituents, people like that. And it can go the same way also, or go the opposite way. If you have built up trust and expectations within a person, and then you break that trust and something is confusing, something is different, that's just going to hinder. And you don't want to have that be hindering. And so I'm going to talk about all of the ways to make sure that foundation of your organization visually doesn't allow that to happen. So these expectations include consistency, predictability, transparency, professionalism, and your tone and voice. So we'll kind of go into all of these, but consistency is going to be over not only your visuals, but also your mission. And while your mission can grow, make sure that your root mission is always active. Predictability is when people look for something from you, they know what they're going to receive in return. Transparency is, are you certified by GuideStar? Are you open about where your donations are going, what they really mean and what they do? Professionalism is, of course, that you look put together and true to your brand. And then tone and voice is going to be how you speak to present yourself. And inconsistencies with that we'll get into can be minor but hindering. So let's talk about your brand style guide. So your brand style guide is a lot of people like to put it in a PDF document just so it's right there in front of you. It's an accumulation of starting with your mission statement, your visual guidelines, which we're going to go into in depth, partner practices in order to maintain your level of trust that you desire, and guiding principles, things like that. There's tons of resources online of other organizations. WWF has a really great brand book that you're welcome to look at, but just doing a little Google search is a great way to get started and see what's out there. So we're going to jump into the visual guidelines. And so this is kind of a very touchy subject sometimes, because the bigger your organization gets, the more strict these are going to have to be. And so there's going to be a lot of regulations, rules, guidelines, things like that, which sometimes people can take as a little restricting. The goal of that is not to be restricting creativity. It's in order to maintain this consistency across all different platforms in order to increase your awareness and increase and optimize your spread in the world, so that when people see your brand and understand your brand, you're fully reaching that top point of trust and expectations, because there's no surprises, there's no inconsistencies. So no matter what stage of, whether you're a new organization or a well-established organization, getting started in this visual consistency is very, very important to building that trust. So your brand style guide, a basic guide, is going to consist of your logo uses, your color palettes, and your fonts. And a more advanced guide is going to have more rules on content, some mission statements, mood boards, which images you're going to use, icons, designs, basically anything that you put out on a constant basis should be included in your brand style guide. So it's a bunch, all of the collection of pieces that make up your organization's personality. So let's started with the logo first. So these are some of the really nice logos you can check out on Elevation. We have a great resource of 75 what we think are some of the best nonprofit logos for a myriad of reasons. But so let's get started into how creating your own. When you're creating your logo, you want to start with your identity. It's the number one thing and importance, that your logo is going to represent who you are. It's going to be the most visually recognized piece that people see, and sticking that piece and sticking that icon on something is going to have immense power. So when you're breaking this down, you're going to want to start with what's the description of your organization, who are you serving, what are similar nonprofits that are working in your realm, what do their logos look like. You don't want to be blending in, doing the same thing, but if you noticed a trend, make sure you note that and decide how you want to respond. Preferred type of design, got a list of these designs on the side here. Feel free to take a screenshot or a picture of that, or we can send out our brand style guide at the end of this, and basically goes into all of this. So check out that. Also think about your slogan or tagline that you already have created. What is the overall feeling of the logo that you're trying to admit? And if you already have color fonts and preferences, make sure you note those. So a few things when you're considering creating you should consider while you're creating your logo is break it first down into what is your mission in 2 words. The importance of this is that if you're looking to expand and scale over time, your 2 words, most of your scaling is going to relate back to those 2 words. So this is now a scalable mission. So your logo should reflect that. Does it span over time? As you can see on the bottom, WWF started in 1961 with this very similar bear, with the panda, which is one of the most recognized nonprofit brands of our day and age. And while it's been able to grow over time, and it gets about a new face every 10, 15 years, it looks like, at the same time, the origins of it are stayed very true. One thing about that is flat design. So this is called a flat design. It doesn't have 3D looking images. It's based on a white background. It was a trend that kind of started about 15, 20 years ago, and it really has stuck. It doesn't seem like that's going anywhere, whereas some nonprofit or some logo designs with a little bit more frill tend to kind of die out after a little while. So you want to make sure that it spans over time. Another thing to check is the simplicity. Does each icon have a purpose? So you don't want it to be filled with random lines, random dots, things that don't matter. If you can take something out, take it out, because it's probably not as necessary as you think it is. And then it's able to just look much simpler and people can understand it and take it in faster. Another thing is it scalable? Are you able to expand in the future, and can you easily differentiate the different branches? So this is talking about if you are looking on expanding to having branches by cities, branches by states, are you able to attach that logo along with it of differentiating these different brands? So one thing to consider when creating your logo is the white space. Brands don't want to feel cramped, of course, so make sure that you have a amount separating this, since so much thought was put into your logo. Don't crowd it by things, because it's just going to like die out in that if it's too cramped in. So keep a minimum white space area to be used around the logo. You also should have layout options. Your options should include one very small, scalable, and easily placeable icon that's going to be recognizable, and then plus one more that either has your full organization name or plus your slogan. So have two options there. And if you have a tagline, you might want to consider having one horizontal and one vertical and square. You also should consider a few things of how not to use the logo. So your logo is something that is the number one thing that people recognize on your brand. And so that is something that you want to be aware of. It seems a little bit restricting when you say like, oh no, I'm sorry, we can't use your logo in a triangle box, because that's not what it really signifies. But this regulation is incredibly important when people taking in this information, and having this consistency is something that people will really thrive by. So making sure that you are noting that stretching and distorting, rotating, adding different graphic effects, and adding strange backgrounds, those ones are things you're going to want to take note of. When you're creating your logo, make sure that you have appropriate size and resolution. This is going to be your pixel size. So in order for, you can see right here that if the size is too small, when you blow it up, it's going to be pixely, it's going to be difficult, and it's not going to look as clear, concise as the one that has the larger resolution. So make sure you start with that larger size, because you can always scale it down depending on what you need. So this is a quote by John Williams from Entrepreneur Magazine. He's been doing branding for a very long time, but he suggests that you can't look at a logo for fewer than 10 seconds and redraw it with decent accuracy. It's probably too complex to be easily remembered. So this is really just remembering that keep it simple and don't overdo it. Make sure everything there has a reason. All right, so now we're going to jump into colors. So some of you have probably heard about color psychology. There's a lot that goes into this research, and there's tons of different things you can find online about color psychology. And so here's just a few little examples. The color red is going to be found more alerting, health-oriented, and passion-related, while yellow brings sunlight, happiness, optimism. It's considered one of the happiest colors. Green is going to be rooted in nature, energy, and fresh, while water is or blue is often considered to be dependable and comfortable and rooted in water. So they have a lot of associations just from our day-to-day activities. So take that in mind when you are choosing your color scheme for your organization. So for each color, you're going to need specific color codes. So there's 4 different color codes that you need, and these are all used in very different things. If you're unfamiliar with the color code, it's a series of numbers and letters that create that one specific color, either online or in printing. So you need your CMYK for your full color printing, your Pantone for logo and stationery printing, and your RGB is going to be for web use, while your hex is also going to be for web use. So hex number is often used in HTML publications as well online. So following your primary colors, these as an example from UCLA, we have your 2 primary colors. You're going to have your secondary colors, and you could even after that have your tertiary colors. And these are just other variations that you can use. The larger you get, the more these are going to be regulated as these become more visible. You can also have a brand gradients. It's good to just recognize the start and end point and the midpoint just to make sure that the gradient is consistent. So then there's this color combination chart, and this looks a little bit ridiculous, but if you really look into it, you see why it's necessary. So on the top row, you're going to have all of your text, and on the rows going down, you see all the different backgrounds. And you can see on each cell what the text looks like on top of that background. And you'll note underneath it, they have grades. So there's a AAA, a AA, a do not use in red, and this is basically saying which color combinations are going to work best, which color combinations you should avoid, and this is really to create the most visually engaging and simple experience that you can when people are using your content. It's also nice to have a list of do nots, things like this of do not create your own gradients, do not use this type on this in case that is related to a different nonprofit, things like that. Just a simple list of just remember, don't use these colors or color combinations. So next up, you're going to have your font choice. I remember when I first learned about regulating font choice, and it was one of the most surprising things for me, and I was a little confused by it and taken back, and now I can see how incredibly valuable it is when actually promoting your brand. And it's going to be incredibly valuable for nonprofits here too. It plays a massive role in creating your brand. So you're going to use a main font and a secondary font. And that main font might come from the logo in particular, if your logo uses a font type. And if it doesn't, then you're just going to choose one main font that is a little bit more oomph, a little bit more defining characteristics, and might be a little bit harder to read. It can have more of your personality and energy. And then in the secondary font is going to be used for your publications, for your paragraph writing, for your content writing, your emails, things like that. So make sure for this one that you have variations in size, color, style, and boldness. So you're going to want to use like bold, book, regular, light, thin, and all those different kinds. And that will bring you more choices in order to create something more visual appealing to look. So these can include like Gotham or Helvetica for a more modern look, or Times New Roman or Georgia for a more professional or old school look. You're also going to have fonts that are more equipped for printing, and then fonts that are more equipped for web use. Google Fonts is a really great tool for web use, so feel free to check that out as well. One thing that's great to include in your style guide will be examples of what your title and paragraph outlines can look like utilizing both your main font and your secondary fonts. Next thing to look at is going to be your voice and tone. So the voice of the organization, I like to describe as, if you were a person, what would you be like? Or if your organization was a person, what would you be like? Choose 3 different adjectives that describe the overall voice of your organization, and remember those throughout all of your different forms of communication. Your voice is really going to be a major amount of play in your website because you have full freedom, blank slate, anything you can write. The tone of voice, however, comes into play when you're speaking on different platforms. So if that person was in that specific interaction, how would they speak or respond in that given platform? So let's go into voice a little bit. So when you're choosing your voice, you're going to be deciding between these different extremes. It's going to sit somewhere in the middle. Are you going to be more formal or more chatty? Are you going to be more detached, more warm, more professional or more wacky, more serious, more humorous, more laid back, or more lively? So a few things kind of just get you thinking about what your voice will sound like and what you want to stand for. Your tone is going to be a little bit different. Like I mentioned before, your website is going to stay more true to your voice. You have a full platform to write authentically. Emails are going to be, in this day and age, they're designed to be skimmed. People don't spend a lot of time reading long copy, so use strong copy but less words and focus on your headlines and call to actions. Social media is going to be quick and tends to be more human oriented. You have a little bit more freedom with that. However, if you are a very professional brand, that's a little bit tricky because you don't want to be casual and you want to maintain your essence of profession. So one thing that we recommend is that you want to speak in a professional voice that is not dry, but you want to speak as if you're in an interview. So have charisma, use some more interesting language, and that kind of creates the essence of professionalism in a more suitable environment on that social platform. So next we're going to go into your image options. Your images are going to be rooted in your website along with the content that you share on social platforms and other forms of platforms. So you have an option to choose vector-based, like Khan Academy is vector-based. While they use images, they're rooted in creative designs and graphics. Or you can do professional or in-house photography. This is WWF again on this side. Their focus is on the earth. The earth is there to be photographed and it's beautiful. So they decided to embrace that as they did. All right, so that's kind of the basics of what your brand style guide is going to compose of for the visual content. But now we want to actually implement this content. So what is that going to look like? This is going to be involved in your website, your print media, brochures, business cards, newsletters, on your social media, your blog, video, presentations, and your other fundraising resources. So your website is number one, and your brand is kind of the basis for your website. You are trying, that is your go-to for your organization. It has all of your information, all of your resources, and how to get anywhere that relates to you. So when people visit your website, you have to make an impact. You have 7 seconds in order to make that impact. According to the general attention span of people who are coming to your website, they generally stay for 7 seconds and make a decision on whether or not they would like to stay. So your goal is to send your message about what your organization is and what you stand for that resonates in those first initial seconds. So how are you going to do that? So we're going to go through an example from the American Brain Tumor Association. And so we're going to start with their logo and their colors. This is the 2 things that we have. Their logo, they have a large square and a horizontal longer form, plus their primary color and their secondary colors. So what does that look like on their website? You immediately see all of those colors. There's a great image in the back, but on the top, you have the gradient of their color. The initial CTA down in the center is in their branded color. And while it's not everywhere, it's not their main focus, it's how they create the illusion of their brand. So it's a really great start. So they're going from the issue area to organization impact, which tells their nonprofit story and importance throughout their homepage. So there's a lot of different ways that your website is trying to cover. So this includes your issues and your impact. So the one thing you want to note is that you're going to try to use as little text as possible here. Instead, you want to use powerful and high quality imagery. So you can see from here, the first thing you see is this beautiful image of a dad and his daughter and his dog. So their logo is correctly placed in the upper left of the page. You can see on the left, the American Brain Tumor Association, and it has their words. It's the full logo, their horizontal logo. And on the right, you're gonna see the donate page in one of the secondary colors. So the donate page is generally on the right in most practices. So keeping it there is a great way for people to associate within themselves. Choose one of your secondary colors for that image. So that you have both the primary and the secondary colors featured here. And then a few other ways that the American Brain Tumor Association has built their brand through their site that you might not even be noticing. Their mission statement is right smack dab in the center. This organization is a support group for people affected with brain tumors and a resource for both patients and caregivers. So what else can you learn from them? They have transparency. At the top, you have their phone number, your social sites, and ways to contact the organization. You know that they're a nonprofit. You have the logo on the left, the donation button on the right. What you can learn from the menu, the About Brain Tumors, is not about us, it's about their topic. It's an educational resource, and they're now branding themselves as a source of authority. Get involved is a community and opportunities for interested parties. Research is more focused and creates the essence of authority and that they are an informed organization. They have a section for healthcare professionals and other ways to donate. So the importance of all of this is that the more you can consider yourself an authority figure and build that trust and see that professionalism, the more confident people are going to be when donating to your organization. And when people are coming to research, they want to see this transparency, this professionalism, this mission statement all together in your brand. One unique thing that they have that a lot of nonprofits are looking into is this accessibility feature. You can see on the right and at the top, they have different languages. So already you know that they're caring more and making sure to go the extra mile for those that need it. So these are a few of the pages that they have information about brain tumors and educational resources on their topic. Note that they have the consistent font, the consistent image in the background that is then covered with their color and is filled with their primary and secondary colors here. The footer is very similar, that it has the logo and transparency in the phone number, email addresses, fax number, location of the headquarters, the address, along with all relevant links. They also have more transparency underneath the Charity Navigator. They have certifications from Charity Watch and America's Best Charities. So that's another way of giving them credibility when people are coming to research the organization. So all of this and what they've learned is now a representation of what this brand stands for. And all of these colors and all of this text is going to be picked up psychologically and associated with this mission. So carrying that forward through the rest of your sites is going to be very important. So let's look at other ways that this can be implemented. Social media and Facebook. You have a few options here. Your profile image should be your logo. Your cover photo can be a little bit more creative as your cover photo will be your first impression. It can be something that's an upcoming event or informative on your organization. And also make sure that your photos are consistent with your brand coloring, things like that. And continue that transparency through your About Us page. So the important things to note on when designing your Facebook page is that, well, number one, everyone needs a Facebook page in this day and age. It's the number one thing that many people look at to ensure legitimacy, but it, however, is not the most interacted with piece of content. So make sure you have it. It doesn't have to be your number one main focus, but make sure that you're checking your profile image, your cover photo, your About Us, and your photo branding. You also have Twitter. It consists with a very similar thing with the added benefit that online you get to choose your color for whether or not you're following, and your tweet to page and your own color brands. So American Brain Tumor Association used their primary color of purple to then create that extra essence of brand. So you want to note on here your color scheme. You can also check who you follow. That's a good representation and authority. Your profile image and cover photo, what you share and the language that you share it in is important to note and stay consistent. You also have the freedom to change your username and your name. These are good for if you have different branches underneath your username, and your location and link. So keep that transparency available and make sure that you're hitting all of those marks. Next up, we have YouTube. I'll go through these kind of quickly and so we can keep on time. You're going to have a cover photo, a profile image, a featured upload, which is going to be your main video people see when they go to your YouTube page, about the organization, the mission, and the background is what you want it to cover. So people come, they understand, and it's their first touch point on your page. You can also edit your About Us page to include your description, relevant details, and links, and your ability to change the featured image on the videos and look coherent. So if you see on the right, you can change the the thumbnail that you use on your images in order to stay consistent with colors, things like that. Then we have social media for Instagram. Instagram you have a little bit more freeway with, and you can decide based on your brand of what images you want to share. So you want to make sure that you are seeing something that represents you, but you have two options. The main option is this WWF, who decides to use their relevant content, continuing with their images of the earth, things like that. It creates visually appealing. People want to follow for more than just their mission organization, and that's another way to draw in people. Here you can change your photos and stories, your highlight line, which is what goes underneath, your bio, your username is something to be considered, your actual name, your bio, your website link, which can be changed according to different campaigns, and your hashtags. This is another organization, the UN Women and United Nations Women Organization. They take the branding of keeping with their more graphic-oriented branding, and when you look at an image and it comes up on your feed, you see their brand immediately. Not everyone chooses to go this way, but it's definitely an option, especially when you're more vector-based and when you want to use this as a source of information and awareness, instead of sharing photos and using the captions primarily as WWF does. LinkedIn is another option. For this, you want to be checking your cover image, your shared content, which will be more professional and authoritative, and your website. Your employees will be on here, your company life will be on here, your bio and your About Us page will be all be on here. So this seems like a lot right now, but making sure that you have all of these covers creates consistency, creates authority, and creates professionalism within your brand. So a few questions to ask yourself before you start your social media account. How is this media account going to help us meet our goals? Who is the audience? And is this the correct channel to meet them? And do I have the resources to develop this effective content, execute it, and moderate it on a daily basis? It's a lot to do, and making sure you have that before you jump in or start a new account for a new branch, something like that, make sure you have those resources. A few things to create guidelines for. These are for large organizations who have branches in other cities, that it's good to create a sense of stability in your username, your profile, things like that. So it's good to take note of these. And then these ones, you guys will get the recording, but if you want to take a screenshot of these are the dimensions you want to use for all of your social media platforms. So here's Instagram and YouTube. And then we've got LinkedIn. And there's tons of resources for this online as well. HubSpot has really great materials, if you've heard of that. Also, you're going to want to create email templates. These are standardized, and you can create them and share them as HTML files for those who want to use them. They're great to have an announcement template, an event standard, an event light, newsletter standard, newsletter light, campaign oriented, basically whatever your organization needs the most and will use the most. Creating email templates that people can pull from and are consistent just adds the extra step, the extra mile in creating your brand. Presentation templates, you may recognize this from the beginning of our presentation here. This is branded in our own content. It has our colors, it has our font, and it has our signature gradient from the purple to the teal, and bringing that back around and having different options and keeping that consistent in your own webinars and your own presentations. Having your presentation decks to potential donors looking professional and ready is an incredible way to establish legitimacy and professionalism and keep your brand stable. Other things you want to look into is print media. It's really great to get that extra level of professionalism to hire a graphic designer to create some drag and drop files for all of your potential forms of print media. This will save you lots of time in the future and create a really consistent brand look. So make sure it includes the colors, the logos, and the font. So thank you all for joining me today. If you have any questions, I believe that we can either get a few answered maybe if we have some time, or you can reach out to me. My email is shenry@elevationweb.org. I hope you learned something about branding and the importance of having your nonprofit brand, and found something valuable in here. So thank you guys so much, and love being here.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a couple of questions, and everyone, if you have any, feel free to pipe in. So one of the questions I had was related to the point that you made that people don't like change. But I also know people don't respond well to very outdated branding. So how do you know when change is necessary, and how do you kind of identify what the most important pieces to update are?
Absolutely. So rebranding is incredibly powerful and takes a lot of thought and consideration. And so when you reach the point where you have had your brand for a good amount of time, or maybe you've realized that people aren't really picking up on your brand as well as they should be, or you're looking at different trends and seeing that something that was very, very trendy back in the day of when it was created is not really being used nowadays, that's a sign that it's time for an update. And so that's the importance of when you're creating a rebranding campaign. All of this same thing will apply, except you're going to want to root it in your former brand and then transfer and update. So you need the foundation to stay similar. And that could be keeping that foundation of keeping your color scheme the same, or keeping some font choice the same, or using a part of your former logo and implementing it and growing it and expanding it. So you never want to wipe it clean and start fresh, because then you're just going to start back from number one and you're going to lose all of that consistency and trust. So rebranding campaigns, when you find that they're ready to get started, make sure that you take the time and consideration to go through all the different steps, see what is not working in particular, what can you save, and what can you expand on to create a more expansive and updated look. And brands go through this all the time. So there's many resources, and we've helped out many nonprofits with their rebranding as well.
Okay, perfect. I have one more question, but in the meantime, Kim asked if you could put up the slide for LinkedIn.
Yes.
She wanted to write something down but missed it.
Absolutely. Let me hop back there. All right, there's LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And I can go through these quickly again in a second too.
Okay,
just so if
perfect.
you want to take a screenshot or send the PDF even later.
Another question that I had was about ways we can keep accessibility kind of at the forefront of our minds when we're choosing color schemes and fonts and even the font sizes. Do you have any best practices that we can share with nonprofits who maybe deal with older clients or clients who have different site requirements than we do?
Right. Well, it's best practice for all organizations to remember accessibility these days. And a lot of a really good practice is to make sure that your fonts are easily readable and you're using enough white space when creating your different designs. The font size should be large enough that people can read it who have difficulty reading, and are not so squished together that there's no white space in between, because then things can start running together. And according to colors, one thing that might be good to take note of is people who are colorblind, creating a logo that uses two colored images using a red and a green layered on top of each other, you're going to lose that entire population of being able to recognize that brand and your logo. So definitely look into the relationships of colors between that. Along with accessibility, it's very important nowadays to have any video content you produce, create captions on, upload those either onto the video file themselves or create and import a file caption onto your YouTube video that people can trigger captions or not. And if you have any more questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. I can give a little bit more detailed information on that. Yeah, so I think that about covers the three.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I didn't even think about the colorblind issue.
Yes.
And I think that just kind of speaks to the point that if you don't have accessibility needs, it's hard to anticipate what people might need. Are there any resources that you would recommend for people who are looking for insight maybe about what accessibility issues they might need to address?
Yes, let me pull up a link, and I can send a link. There are guidelines now these days of recommendations. Yeah, so I can include a link in the follow-up email that you guys will all get about accessibility guidelines that are really great for brands to follow to make sure you're hitting all of the resources, along with the accessible web plugin that we use on our own website to create that accessible feature. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. So everyone, I will send you a follow-up email with the recording and a couple other resources, and we'll be sure to get that in there. And I've got one more question from Melissa. She said, when you have a new product or campaign, is it a good idea to copyright the idea before showing it off or going to sponsors so no one can steal your idea? So I guess, when do you need to copyright a logo and when do you not need to worry about it?
I would suggest, depending on the size of your organization, it is good to copyright any materials that are specific to and will be reused by your brand. Copywriting your main logo in particular is the most important one to copyright, because you want to make sure that that is yours and is not being used in ways that are not approved by you. Variations of that, you do have a little bit more leeway, but I would suggest making sure that if something is going to be like a nationally branded campaign with a very large audience, I would suggest copywriting something like that. If it's a smaller organization-based, community-based logo that plays off your own logo already, you might not need to copyright that. Just adding some text, unless the text is very specific in your font choice and or especially designed font. Just adding text might not need to be logoed, but if you are doing those specific copyrighted, but if you are doing those specific specifications, then that would probably be very helpful and beneficial.
Okay. And do you tend to start the copywriting progress when you have finalized everything, or do you recommend copywriting maybe different iterations of logos as you're trying to choose what you're going to use?
I would suggest waiting until you have the copy, like you have the final logo that you're going to decide on. It doesn't seem that necessary to copyright those that you're deciding between, unless you want to save them for future use.
Okay.
So if you're just going to scrap it, you probably won't need to copyright it. But if it's related to you and you want to use it in the future, just and kind of put it on hold for now, probably worth looking into copywriting that.
Perfect. That is super helpful, especially for me, because I have never even touched copywriting or logo generation or anything. That covers the questions that we have now. Everyone, you have been absolutely fantastic in signing up and joining in and asking questions, and it's been really great working with you guys. Keep an eye out on your inboxes. I will send you a follow-up email in the next couple of days that will include links to your resources. Sarah mentioned her presentation. It will include a link to the recording. It will link you to some resources from the QGIve blog, and it will let you know about upcoming webinars in case you're looking for other fun webinars to attend. Sarah, thank you so much. I know you're away all the way down in another hemisphere, but I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to share your insight with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Good. Awesome. All right, everyone, have a great Tuesday. We will see you at the next webinar, and let us know if we can help you with anything. Have a good one.
All right. Bye.